Good morning, everybody. It's day 3 of the Future of Wine Tourism seminar or webinar, and our lives have been overtaken by screens, it seems, and as we navigate a very uncertain future, I'm excited, though, to share with you insights and really practical advice from our panel of experts, wine lovers, and all women this morning. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. We've got attendees joining us literally from all over the world, as far afield as Chile, Spain, Portugal, Canada, quite a few businesses from Australia, and the UK and the USA, and of course here from South Africa as well. The world is upside down. That's no lie. And our lives have changed in an instant. In the beginning of 2020, we were looking forward to continued growth in tourism and in the wine industry. And we find ourselves 3-4 months down the line with borders closed and wine tourism that's come to a grinding halt. Here in South Africa, to add to our pain, we've not been able to export wine until recently, and we're still not able to buy or sell any alcohol. So the industry is bleeding. But what do? Do we sit and panic, or do we get ourselves ready to tackle, albeit an uncertain future, a future that we need to tackle and we need to thrive in? So just to let you know how today will work, we are joined by a number of panelists, and we'll be talking about operational readiness and getting really practical and hands-on today. And before I share and introduce the panel to you, I also want to remind you that if you want to pose any questions and pop that onto the question feature, you're very welcome to. My fellow Destinate, Mariette, is driving the back end, and we will get to those questions in the end. We are waiting for Mary Beth to join us from Chile. I'm not sure if she's having technical difficulties, but we will continue in the meantime. And if Mary Beth joins us, we can continue as well. So other panelists include Carolyn Martin from Creation Wines in that beautiful Jebel en Aarde Valley near Hermanus. Ntsiki Biyela of Aslina Wines. She needs very little introduction. She's one of our most beloved winemakers, women winemakers, and really a pioneer in the industry as well. Kristen Duff of Glou Wine. She's also involved with Publik and wears a number of hats. And then Robin Shaw, all the way from Australia, Wine Tourism Australia, needs very little introduction as well. We're going to jump straight in and come to you, Carolyn. Innovation and transformative experiences has always been at the heart of creation. You have taken wine tourism and really fully embraced it as a business and made it your core of the business. Of course, you make fantastic wine as well, but you've really used wine tourism to provide a unique selling point to what creation offers. And it doesn't hurt to have such a beautiful backdrop to do that with. What do you think is the biggest adjustment needed at operational level? And can you give us a glimpse into some of the practical things that you and your team are doing, as tough as it is right now, and getting ready for this new era in wine?
Right, so we've just got a new exhibition here called Metamorphosis. It couldn't be more apt. So I thought I'd start with that. We're working on a project called Cocoon to Creation. But in the workplace, we've obviously also had to look at very practical things like, how we transport staff safely to work, how we screen people as well, when people enter, the sanitary issues that we need to consider. We were doing a lot of that actually before the lockdown already. Clocking procedures, we're not using, fingerprinting, we're using facial recognition. So there are little things like that where, less touch points, always important. PPE, obviously all the staff need to be kitted out with the right, masks and sanitizers, and we need to have all the sanitizers everywhere in all of the rooms and in the bathrooms. Special, assigning one person to just kind of literally cleaning everything. signage as well, just to remind the employees of the procedures that need to be in place. And then obviously just training, you know, continuous training. As I said, we were already doing a lot of that before. Training on how corona spreads, you know, what they need to be doing to prevent that. And then we've got health and safety representatives in each area of the business, and they're responsible for those different areas of the business as well to make sure that the word gets out. In terms of workspaces, social distancing, so we've got quite a big facility here, so we don't really have to, we're not kind of crowded at all. We can work in different spaces in the building, which is quite useful. No physical contact between employees, all the things that they've been talking about on television. But looking at, you know, the detail of everything, suppliers, like how the delivery area needs to be set up, things like that. And how the intake of goods happens and how it gets sanitized. And then the guest entrance, you know, how the guests, how the staff have to wear masks. The guests would actually in the beginning have to as well, but we'll have a dedicated person looking after each group. So I think, again, very, you know, training people to multitask so that they can actually do all of the job. So it's not that someone takes you on a vineyard safari and then does a wine tasting with you and then does a food and wine pairing. The person will be able to actually do all of those activities. So that's one of the things that we've kind of created personal shoppers for everybody. So everybody has a personal shopper that they can actually create a special, you know, they can actually have a personalized experience and using the spaces that we've got efficiently. So not only the tasting room, but a clean space in the cellar, an area that maybe we can use there, perhaps at one of our guest houses, which is not being used at the moment, we can actually set up a lunch there, and we can use the vineyard space, the garden, and the terrace. So, and people would have to make reservations. They can't come without a reservation in the beginning. Our idea is to rather have a drop, you know, to have an online Zoom open all day so that people can literally check in with us and taste with us online at any time that they'd want to, from 10 to 5 every day, pretty much. So they would have a sommelier who can actually do that tasting online with them. And then, of course, in terms of, you know, traveling, we can't really do that at the moment. So our idea there is to do a Zoom tasting with all of our agents, their salespeople, and their clients in their shops or wherever they are in the world, to actually have dinners. Got some ideas to plan some wine dinners in Australia, Robin. 10 people in a restaurant with maybe a range of South African wines, and creation being one of them. So working in collaboration with other producers.
I will help you with that.
That's so wonderful. Thank you. Yes, I actually was going to ask you for your help. And, you know, we've been collaborating across the world with people. So it's just been amazing how people have come to the party. I actually wanted to ask you some endorsements from those wonderful Australians that came to visit us a few years ago.
Be happy to provide them, Carolyn.
That's so kind. And then, yeah, so just using our open spaces, our table setup, obviously we're going to like take tables out of the tasting room when we get to the point that we can actually open the tasting room so that, you know, there is more space between people. Then we have got, you know, minimizing the number of people, as I said, that look after guests and spacing those out. I think that's pretty much, I don't know if you've got any other questions about that at the moment. Some creative aspects of it are, I can tell you about those if you like.
What comes to mind, Carolyn, and what's striking from that is how you've taken it in your stride and really looking at taking what's still at the heart of a brand like creation and digitalizing it and bringing it on more online, but still retaining that personal touch. I love the idea of assigning a champion to visitors, because I think as visitors venture forth, safety and health is top of mind now for all of us. So to have the assurance that we are being taken care of by a particular person, and that we can still have the full creation experience, but we know that there's this trust relationship So I think as we've been chatting over the last few days, the currency of trust is more important than ever before. And how we're instilling that sense of trust, and very importantly, also within the team members that work with us. You know, it's one thing safeguarding visitors, as we've said yesterday. It's a whole nother thing for our teams to feel safe, well looked after, and part of the solution and helping to move the business forward. And it's a tough time for the industry. You said earlier when we were catching up that you've had to let some people go. You've had to change other people's roles and responsibilities in the business. And as hopefully visitors return, you'll be able to bring more of the staff back into the operations again. And that's a tough thing, isn't it? A tough thing when you start dealing with the human impact of this pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, we've laid people off at the moment, so we're trying to avoid retrenchments as much as possible. We don't know, that depends on how long things are going to take to get, you know, to come right. But there are other things that we've thought about. I mean, we've started our takeaway creation metamorphosis story. It's like from cocoon to creation. So we actually did our first deliveries last night where the chefs prepared meals and took them to people's houses, and with all the PPE and everything, and actually delivered and explained how to, you know, heat the meals or whatever. But very beautiful dishes that we've created. We've also created recipes for those dishes, so that, and we've created videos showing people how to make them, so that if they don't live locally in Amanus and they live somewhere else in the world, they'll be able to make the dishes from the recipes and pair it with our wines somewhere else in the world. And we will also offer a personalized chef service, so that a chef could actually go and cook in someone's kitchen if they felt more comfortable with that, with all of the right PPE and everything.
Wonderful. So real innovation there in practice. Ntsiki, from your side, whilst we've been talking about equipping our workforce, I want to spend a little bit more time talking about that. What, in your opinion, are the most critical aspects of training and equipping that's needed now for the sector to move forward? You know, where does our people fit into this? What is the thing that we need to focus on in terms of training and equipping our teams?
I think, thank you very much. I think in terms of equipment, I think education is, again, has always been the core of the wine industry. And again, it's going to continue to be that. I think people are going to need to understand, because I think one of the things that we have, we've been training people how to do stuff, how to do this, not specifically obviously on COVID-19, as we're starting with that now, but is to get people to understand that their immune system is important, is to actually start from the people themselves, so that they understand. Because I don't think, when you look at our people working, that has ever been part of their priorities. People we don't prioritize sometimes with ourselves. So to understand that you have to be healthy as possible, and how actually, what are the things that you can use at home? Don't look outside. What are the things that you can use at home that will boost your immune system? Like the natural stuff that is readily available that people can use. And then as they're basically getting themselves healthy and all that, again, train them on what actually to do. Cleaning has been, again, the core of the cellars on the production side, and like wineries, cleaning has been number one. It's just that now we have to even use more sanitizing agents than we've ever used before. And I think most of the things Carolyn has touched on in terms of actually the entrances to the cellars, the entrances to the things that we are using, that people, they need to actually stay sanitized, check every time, checking their temperature, screening all the time, just to make people more safe. Actually, to understand themselves, that they need to be more safe, how they protect themselves. I think the key is basically more about the people.
100%.
Yeah.
And we have a responsibility as businesses, and you know, as our world changes, and you know, the visitor expectations change, we also need to keep an eye on our team members, because essentially they're the ones who deliver the magic. They're the ones who deliver the experience. And one of the biggest takeouts of the last few days is about how do we humanify, how do we bring the human element back into wine tourism. You know, we've become very sleek and very professional about everything, but how do we make sure that we align our offering with where the state of mind of our travelers and our local people are. At the moment, everybody is panicked, everybody is uncertain, and our teams are uncertain as well. So we have a big responsibility to really instill a sense of trust, not just amongst our visitors, but also amongst internally within our own teams, so that we can move forward as a unit. I love also what Carolyn spoke about earlier around that greater sense of collaboration that's needed, not just cross-regionally or, you know, between destinations around the world, but also amongst businesses in close proximity. We still work as silos often in the industry, and here's a great opportunity for us to put together experiences and repackage our experiences and operationally start working differently as small regions, as towns, as wine routes, and as bigger wine regions. And then of course share and learn. We are a few weeks and potentially months behind the rest of the world in terms of wine sales. And of course, we've seen a huge boom in online sales. Ntsiki, just talk to me very briefly about how you've seen what you are preparing yourself with. I know you've spent a bit of time in lockdown, just really relooking your business also from a marketing perspective. Talk to me just quickly before we move on around what you're doing to ready yourself for online sales.
I think what we've done so far was, one of the things, obviously, our marketing material and all those things were not in line. So we had to put that in line during this this situation that we're in. And we did a lot of actually virtual tastings, a lot of virtual meetings. I was finding myself sometimes around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning talking to sommeliers, doing tastings in the US or doing tastings in Japan. So that has been actually one of the things that has been the key to still keep that connection, because it is very important. We need to keep connecting with our people. We need to keep talking to them. I think the lockdown got me in KZN at home in the village. And I know that we're living in this concrete jungle in the cities, but it was actually nice to have people doing some videos and having conversation on the background of the village, you know. So it has been something that is exciting and interesting for the people. So those are things that we've been actually just doing, and also just understanding to try and online to make sure that people, they get it easier. I think as a small business, what we hadn't had a chance of doing was to make sure that when a client buy online, they actually just can pay with a credit card, because it makes it easy for them. But now they still have to do an EFT and all those things. So to try and align those things, put those systems in place, so that, because as people, we like things to be easy. We don't like complication. So if I go online, I must be able to just choose what I want, pay online, and get done, and then get my stuff delivered. This is basically where we are going. This is where we are actually. I think as the world, as the country. I think the wine industry, we went much on that, but this situation has actually made us to say, hey, wake up, this is what is happening. This is where we're supposed to be.
Great. Thanks, Ntsiki. Now, so as we continue to get really practical today, Kristen, businesses within the value chain of wine tourism will be faced with a really strict set of restrictions and regulations once we eventually get the green light. And we've started seeing how other destinations are slowly but surely starting to open up. And, you know, once we get the green light, from a consumer perspective, what will be the most critical aspects that we need to get right? You know, the non-negotiables. And how can businesses build trust with their customers and their audiences?
Thank you. Yeah, I think there are two critical things from a consumer perspective. You know, a consumer wants to feel safe, and they still want to have a beautiful experience. And I think some of the panelists before me have already outlined a number of excellent ways in which they're implementing safety protocols. You know, Caroline, I feel like she should write the manual for other wineries around South Africa in terms of, you know, things from PPE to hygiene protocols. But I think at the same time, farms just need to remember that, you know, the reason why people come to the winelands. You know, when I think about, you know, going to the winelands as a consumer, I think about sitting outside with rolling vineyards in front of me, drinking beautiful wine. And I think it's important, you know, while having all of those safety measures in place, to still keep the experience beautiful. you don't want people to feel like they're in a hospital from harsh smelling sanitizers and, kind of seeing, being served by someone in a hazmat suit. You still want to keep that experience beautiful. And I think, people are getting quite creative in the things that they're coming up with. I watched quite an interesting webinar a few days ago, the Digital Food Exchange, arranged by Between 10 and 5. And they had Tracy Lee Lynch from the Nando's design experience. And she was basically talking about how a big part of Nando's kind of COVID strategy, beyond just reorganizing their restaurants practically, they're also looking at how they can keep the experience beautiful. So, how can they make their signage, their awareness, or their COVID strategy signage beautiful? How can they make all these elements, not feel like you're in a hospital? So I think that's going to be quite a challenge for farms, to still keep that experience really beautiful. Another thing is just like pay careful attention to the details. So, wine tasting, it's about very subtle flavors, subtle aromas, and you don't want those overwhelmed by, harsh smelling sanitizers and the like. So I know that there are various sanitizers in development that are either odorless or have a more of a foodie aroma. So I think there's a lot of potential to kind of look into those options. I think beyond the actual physical experience, I think communication is extremely important. So, across your channels, your website, your social media, your mailing list, these are all touch points where you can, educate your customers about what you're doing and make them feel safe. I think, really just trying to be relatable, manage expectations in those communications. I think most consumers are quite understanding that things aren't going to just be like how they were before. But I think at the same time, you really need to, just kind of be quite relatable and show I think all of this video communication has actually been great, because I think, a lot of wineries have been in a position to show consumers, the face behind a winery, whether it's the winemaker talking directly on a call like this. So I think it's been extremely relatable in your communications, showing people that you're really doing your best, you're trying, keeping up with the latest COVID developments, how the situation's changing. I think just having that information readily and available is a great place to start.
I love what you say about, whilst we're keeping it practical, we also want to keep it real and on brand, because you're absolutely right. What we don't want to see are some of these kind of sticky taped, just printed stuff all over, smelling like a hospital when we're walking in. So that visitor experience, and as you said, the beauty of why are we visiting the winelands in the first place. And of course, here in South Africa and other places around the world, we are blessed with a beautiful natural backdrop. How are we utilizing that more at the moment? We have fairly good weather most of the year. How are we bringing the inside out and the outside in, and really starting to rethink about operationally how we operate? And as you say, keeping in mind what our visitors' expectations are of us and their brand experiences. We've got so many loyal and very passionate supporters of wineries within a close proximity to that winery. And how are we starting to think about enticing them for that first trip out? So often we've been very fixated on the international tourist, and I want us to in a bit, we're going to talk a little bit about locals. And before I move on to Robin, I want to just pause with you a little bit, Kristen, and ask you, we've been talking quite a lot about the shift in our markets and making sure that we focus more of our energy, obviously, on the local and the domestic traveler and citizens themselves and local people. Operationally, do you think there's anything that we must do differently going forward to satisfy what local people would want from a visitor and a wine tourism experience? We've been speaking about price and how we repackage and represent wine tourism offerings to local people. Just some of your thoughts in terms of also thinking about our traveler and who they are, and that they might be someone that lives just down the road.
Yeah, I mean, if I think about somewhere like Creation, Creation's offerings attract international tourists from all over. So I think there's definitely a great opportunity to yeah, entice the local community in, whether that's having local specials. For example, I remember I spent some time working in the Napa Valley, and they had a special industry, or they waived the tasting fee if you worked in the wine industry or if you were part of the local community. So I think there are ways to bring people in by making them feel special because they are locals, because they're part of your community. And then also because, you know, these are the people that you have on your doorstep. I think what Carolyn's already mentioned, I know other farms are doing that kind of home delivery where you can actually deliver a tasting experience, you know, whether that's a pairing experience or a wine experience to someone's home, and then be able to do tutored tastings, tutored wine pairings. You can create that kind of experience for people just down the road in your community. You know, you're not going to be able to deliver your exact, you know, gourmet made meal to someone on the other side of the world. Like Carolyn said, you know, you can provide recipes. But yeah, I think definitely there are ways to entice the locals in and actually make them feel maybe they hadn't felt part of your local community before because you were so geared to foreigners. So whether that's adjusting your pricing for locals, yeah, trying to kind of get the word out and communicate a little bit more in that local space.
Absolutely. Robin, you've been an advocate for wine tourism, not just in Australia, but around the world for a number of years. And in your opinion, what practical support do businesses require to get them operational ready for a new era in wine tourism? It's, you know, some people naturally have that sense of innovation and creativity, but some wineries need some practical support as well going forward.
Yes, Mariette, and thanks for inviting me onto the panel tonight in such a wonderful group of ladies. It's terrific. Here in Australia, obviously it's a slightly different situation to South Africa. We are coming out of, I guess, the restrictions. Our state borders are still closed. So we'll be opening up first to regional tourism. So in terms of the practicalities, right now it's how do we cater for small numbers of people being able to come through our doors and still have that make money for us. Cafes and restaurants are now starting to open up again, but our cellar doors are yet to receive the go-ahead. People can come in for takeaway, but they can't come in and actually have a tasting and stay on site. So those rules are changing. It's state by state. Each of the state tourism organisations here are working very closely with the tourism industry to create packages to help them with what Carolyn was describing, how to be clean, how to sanitise, how to be prepared for when visitors are allowed back again. It's the same for tour operators. There's still a lot of confusion around social distancing. How many people can a tour operator actually have on a motor vehicle at the moment, on small buses, etc. So we're still grappling with all of those things. Once the doors do open again, of course, it's going to be quite a different landscape to what it was before. For those who have heard me speak about experiences at cellar doors, you'll know that I'm a real proponent of seated tasting, something, of course, that Carolyn does extremely well. And I think this is probably the era where we will definitely be moving towards smaller group tastings, obviously spaced further apart, outdoor tastings. And as was mentioned last night on one of the webinars, I can't remember who said it, no, actually the first night when Charles Back was talking about space. So one of the things that, of course, we have at our disposal in our wine regions, on our winery properties, is this idea of space. So we can cater for people in a safe manner and create those types of experiences that they're looking for. What are those experiences that they're going to be looking for? Well, after being disconnected for so long, people are going to be looking to reconnect with each other back in nature. I know we've talked a little bit about sustainability and will later as well. And they're going to want to be back in those real places, connecting with real people and with each other.
Fantastic. And Robin, and just in your opinion, as the businesses are starting to open, you know that Melissa Sutherland, one of our attendees, have mentioned the cellar door experience, and you're a big fan of unique cellar door experiences. You know, so often we've been a bit lazy about that cellar door experience, haven't we? You know, we think it's enough just to offer someone a tasting. How do you think will the cellar door experience change? You know, we haven't spoken a lot about experiences here. We've spoken quite a lot about the human element, the storytelling element, the actual wine experience, and, you know, online sales, etc. But that very thing that sets us apart as brands from each other. You know, people go to a lot of effort to visit wineries. And I think they will now think twice before just jumping in a car and going and experience a winery that could be very similar to another one. How do we differentiate in the light of COVID and post-lockdown our cellar door experience?
Okay, that's a lot of questions in there. I guess the first thing that we've seen happen in Australia, as has happened in the US as well, is the minute everything locked down, people remained thirsty, and really sorry in South Africa that you haven't been able to buy wine. We haven't had that problem, and what we actually have seen is an incredible increase in online sales in all alcohol categories, especially in wine. For wineries who already had a mailing list, a database, a wine club, they've been able to do very well in targeting those customers and creating that relationship with them, or maintaining that relationship with them and selling more that way. Some of the wineries that have been incredibly successful have also then moved towards virtual tastings. So a good friend of mine, Jeff Krieger, at Brokenwood in the Hunter Valley, they've moved to every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. The winemaker comes out and does a tasting of 2 wines. Those wines have been promoted out to the database the week before. People buy a 2-pack. They sit back and enjoy the wine with the winemaker. And it's actually led to case sales as well. And what really blew my mind was that he said they were actually having thousands of people actually sign up. So I think we've actually moved very rapidly into the digital world. Wineries have been a little slow to cotton on to the idea that we can sell our products successfully online and directly to the consumer. In the US, they've been doing it quite successfully for a very long time. It's something now that is going to be more and more important. So I guess if there's something good that's come out of this situation, is that we've now primed people to purchase, to purchase online, and to know that it can be safely delivered to the door where people can enjoy it. In terms of the experiences themselves and how they're going to change, the idea of 20 people lined up at the bar 3 deep is just going to go. That just won't be happening anymore. People won't be comfortable with that idea. And there'll probably be some rules around that for quite some time. So I think we potentially might see a move more towards a relaxed tasting experience, one that does encompass more of how the brand actually interacts with its customers. And maybe we'll see less people at individual properties, but more people will be wanting to go out and connect with nature. And for those brands that I've been following here in Australia, the many clients that I've got have been reporting strong relationships with their customers as a result of this period of time. Carolyn, you'll remember Matt and Lou Fowles from Fowles Wines in the Strathbogies in Victoria. They've been creating care packages for their customers, which have been working really well. So it's food and wine together, and they've also been waiving the shipping of the wine. And what's been really heartening for them is that they've actually had their customers choosing to pay for the shipping, even though it's been offered for free. So there's been this sort of two-way support, offering things for the customers and club members, and at the same time having the customers really loyally wanting to support those brands during this time. It's been really interesting to see.
I love that. And Ntsiki, you want to add to that?
Okay, I want to, so I would like to add, but also have a question on that. In terms of, I think Robin mentioned about the winery that actually has been sending wines to people and all that, because they are already ahead of us. How are they, if she knows, how are they packing the wine in a way that the client feels safe in terms of infections when they receive their wines? And two, I know those things has to do with the collaboration, obviously, with the courier companies, because there has to be, the value chain has to be actually, what do you say? There has to be that understanding that the courier companies have to buy in making sure that all those things are done, because it won't be reflecting to the courier, it will reflect to the winery at the end of the day. You know, so how have they changed the packaging? Have they changed the way they're packing the wine to send to clients, or how has that been?
Thank you for the question. The primary method that we use in Australia for shipping wine, there's a number of different couriers, but Australia Post is the big one. Australia Post has been absolutely inundated with not just wine deliveries, but deliveries of all kinds. I think the last stat I saw was 80 million packages a day having to go out to people. It's been absolutely incredible. So what's happening is that there's a very strict protocol in place where the courier, the postie, will knock on the door, drop the box, and leave. So it's very much a case of there's no actual contact. We also know, of course, from the science, from the medicos, that even if there were any lingering virus, it doesn't really last on cardboard packaging, which is a good thing for us. The 2-packs and things like that people are sending out, obviously is a certain type of packaging that is available here in Australia that people can use, and even smaller formats are going out as well. The National Wine Centre in Adelaide have a very, very big cellar, and they store a lot of their wine in enematics, and they've been sending out 50ml little test tubes of a range of wines from a specific region to customers, who then they jump online a few days later once they've received the wine and have a sommelier hosted, winemaker hosted tasting of those wines. So the packaging, we have the packaging available and the delivery methods available for that as well. One of the issues, of course, that we've had is the delivery times. So I can't remember who mentioned it at the start. There is an expectation among consumers in terms of online purchasing that it's immediate. So that means people need to be able to see the product, click on it, pay for it immediately, and then they expect it to turn up within a couple of days. That timing has been blown out quite considerably here in Australia because of how many packages are going out, but it is really important. So we've had another innovative business here who has, well, they're actually called Wine Depot, and they have depots in each of the capital cities who have managed to work out a way to get fast turnaround delivery, at least within the capital cities, for wineries who are remote. So they store their wine at the capital city depots, and then it can go directly out to consumers that way. So we've seen a lot of really agile businesses trying to cater for this new normal, as it were.
Fantastic. I just noticed an interesting comment from Marissa Nivot, who's our wine tourism manager at Vinpro. And she mentioned that she's visited one of the first wineries that will open yesterday, and their daily and takeaway coffee quite busy, and people want to linger. People want to enjoy the space, as you said, Robin, and potentially what wineries will have to think about is do we give people a time slot, because otherwise, our space might be limited in some places, and as we all are just yearning to get out there, we're going to just hog that picnic site for the rest of the day with our mates and potentially cause quite a delay or a queue or a crowding situation happening. What is your opinion on that? Should we think about a roster perhaps? Should we think about time slots, or obviously pre-bookings with a time slot attached to it?
Yep. So Mariette and Marissa knows we've been working on this as well with the South African Wine Tourism Toolkit, and certainly with our growing wine tourism programs here in Australia, where we're talking about the necessity for creating experiences for which people pay and which are booked ahead of time. So there are various different booking engines available that wineries can use as widgets that can simply be popped onto their websites. Restaurants, of course, are quite familiar with many different ways where people can reserve a table. So yes, I agree. It's an opportunity to actually create experiences for different occasions, different types of groups, different times of the day, where you as the winery owner, the cellar door manager, can allocate different spaces, and then of course manage staff as well, which is another bonus of being able to take bookings in advance, manage those areas certain times of the day, and keep people flowing through that way. So I think we'll see a fair bit of innovation come out of just the necessity of having to do that.
Yeah, and as visitors, we will have to make peace with the fact that we have to, you know, that kind of spontaneity that we used to enjoy, that freedom of movement that we took for granted for so long. Let's just get a couple of mates together, jump in our cars and head out to one of our favorite wineries. We're going to have to think and plan a little bit more. And as you said earlier, people will be prepared to do that. We are going to, you know, be in a post-lockdown era where we're going to have to take care a little bit more of each other as well. And we can't just assume that we can walk onto a winery and there'll be space for us. We're going to have to plan a bit. And I think from a wine tourism experience for businesses, it's an opportunity just to get a little bit more organized and pre-plan some of those experiences. And as Pamela also said on the chat group, an opportunity for farms to open up more of their natural space to visitors. Think about more walking trails in place. Think about putting more picnic sites in place. People are now, your natural space is going to become your most precious asset. Carolyn, you have your hand up and want to add to that.
Oh, actually, I just wanted to quickly ask Robin a question. No. It was about the test tubes and who's doing that in Australia. It's such a cool idea. I saw 67 Pall Mall were doing it.
Yes, National Wine Centre.
Okay, cool.
I'll get you a contact. I'll email you. Also, Jericho Wines in the Adelaide Hills were also doing it. That's two that I know of. There are probably many more that I don't know about. Also, just on the bookings side of things, there's probably also an opportunity for regions to become involved, or you call them wine routes, to become involved in being able to filter and disperse people throughout the region, so that they can maybe have a bit of an idea as to who's got what types of experiences on at different times of the day, and can help people plan accordingly. Mariette, as you said, that spontaneity where we might just pop into a winery because we happen to be in the area may not be possible. But remember, this has been quite normal in places like the Napa Valley for many, many years, where a lot of the places are actually only open by appointment. So I don't think it's a big stretch for us to, as an industry, demand that people actually do make bookings ahead of time. And certainly restaurants are very much used to it, and people are used to it in that space too. So I think we should be able to adapt reasonably well to that idea. Plus, quick booking on the phone is easy. Instant booking, instant confirmation, and people can continue on with their day.
That's a great point. You know, it's one thing expecting people to book in advance. It's another thing making sure that you operationally you are ready to receive those bookings seamlessly and easily, and make it simpler for people. Otherwise, they will move on to your competitor. They will move next door. Like never before, you know, we have no excuse now to get ready and to make sure that the technology is around. It's there. We need to embrace it and we need to utilize it. On the point of technology, I want to come to you, Carolyn, and just talk about the human touch. So we've been speaking about it quite a bit over the last few days, and let's face it, the human touch and the interaction has always been a critical component of what makes wine tourism experience so special. It's that breaking of bread together, that clinking of a wine glass, that shared moments. And we've seen all over social media the different takes on how we will be wine tasting, you know, with shields. And I saw one that has like a blow up plastic, you know, it looks like you're sitting in your own mini booth. You know, there's all sorts of iterations about that. But how do we keep it real and personal despite all the restrictions and this shift to online and screens?
So I think that, you know, with the wide open spaces that that Robin was talking about, and we have a lot of those here. I mean, we've had the most glorious weather. We don't know if that will carry on into winter, but we do have beautiful days in winter even. That we'll literally, you know, use the different areas that we've got. So we've got, during summertime, we set up impromptu places everywhere. And I think, you know, as long as the social distancing is kept intact and people are actually in a very specific group and everything gets sanitized before they come and after they leave, and they have all of those things available to them, and we keep, you know, all of the areas around them pristine. I just think with the very pristine environment and the open spaces, it seems that there are less issues. We yeah, you know, it seems, I'm not sure, but the feedback is that in open spaces that there is less transmission, it seems. I'm not sure. That's what one hears. So outdoors in the vineyards, you can set up tables, you know, can do a vineyard safari and taste the wines in the different blocks. You can, as I said, we can use different facilities like our Voormanshuis and do a tasting on the terrace there if someone wants an absolutely totally bespoke private thing away from the tasting room entirely. We've got the lawn, we've got the terraces, we've got the tasting room inside, we've got bespoke places in the cellar. There's so many different things that we can do. So I think for us in Australia and South Africa, with the good weather that we have, we just need to use as much of the outdoor space as we can. Indoors, I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult. We'll probably only be able to have about 4 groups inside the tasting room at creation, and perhaps those groups will have to be limited in size.
So there's the real challenge, you know, not only the financial knock that we're taking with the lockdown and the travel ban, but also the refitting, the physical refitting and rethinking and reorganizing of our business. And of course, we can't afford to do anything now that's short-term mentality. So whatever we put in place now has got to have legs to carry us through for a few years. I mean, anybody in business knows that, you know, your investments need to pay off. So just share with us 1 or 2 practical things that you're doing inside. We know you've got that beautiful space, but winter is coming in South Africa and it does get chilly and we do have rain and wind, etc. How practically are you refitting creation? And what are some of the advice that you can share with others listening?
I mean, you know, at the moment, well, so much of what I've done has actually been upcycled. So it's like literally taking everything that we've got and just upcycling it. And we've never, you know, we've grown the winery from scratch and we haven't been able to make massive investments in our space, but it kind of has meant that the space is, people feel very comfortable in it. They don't feel that it's a very formal space. But we do present the wines in a beautiful way at the right temperature, in the right glassware and things like that. For us, I think it's about the trust that they have in that host that I spoke about. And it's about the timing of how we manage things and people's expectations. And it's about perhaps using some of the spaces in the cellar. You know, the cellar is quite dormant in winter. And it's kind of cool to be able to go into the cellar, so to use that space. You know, when we started as well, we set up a huge picnic table, which was literally from recycled pallets with tree stumps, and we've got all the little cushions still to go on that. So kind of getting that up and going, that's in the vineyard, to kind of create a unique space there. We really, we don't have the funding at the moment, because for us, the most important thing is to look after our team. So we don't have the funding to do any refurbishments at the moment. We're just kind of doing maintenance on what we've got and really installing a beautiful new exhibition. We've come up with a new menu and we've done a lot of photography and videography, which we've pretty much done everything in-house around, you know, setting the scene for a new story of creation, which is the metamorphosis story from cocoon to creation. That is what we've been doing. So we can create these stories without, and we can create spaces for people to feel safe in without actually having to recreate our space.
The key message is that we shouldn't necessarily panic about going out and rebuilding and refurbishing, but work smartly and creatively with what we've got, with the assets we've got, with the people we've got. And that's a very key message, I think, to the industry. I know there's a lot of people worried about that potential huge financial cost of having to refurbish and thinking that the regulations that's going to be coming out, and I know Marissa and her team will be sharing those draft regulations with the industries, and those will be circulated, certainly here in South Africa, through our network. And I know there's been great work done globally by wine regions in terms of practical regulations and advice to the industry. So I think, Karen, that's a really great takeout, is that work with what you've got, work with your cellar, work with the spaces, work with the material that you have, get creative. What we can't afford now is to fork out a lot of extra money to go and rebuild our tasting rooms and custom fit them. Not everybody is in that position to be able to do that. So it doesn't mean that you won't be able to operate. Perhaps just rethink the layout and the structure of your facilities.
Carolyn, I want to ask you a very practical question. Children.
Yes.
Kids are a very big part of wine tourism. I mean, so many farms are child friendly. That's going to be quite a sticky toffee apple. Yeah, what are we going to do with kids on wine farms?
Well, you know, we have, at the moment, we've had this room where the kids can play and also be outside, but obviously that's not really going to work now. I think what's going to have to happen is that children will have stations set up, depending on their age, next to the tables which that group sits at. You know, what I said before is we'll actually take tables to other places in our building. So we will use each space that we need to, but which is kind of like almost creating a series of separate rooms.
So the key here is that wineries and businesses within the value chain that can be first to market with real practical solutions like that. How do you accommodate a family with kids? How do you accommodate cyclists or runners, and be quite focused in terms of who your target audience is, and being able to talk very specifically and package very specific experiences. I think that's the level of practicality that we need. So that was a great question. Thank you, Anna-Rete. Me, certainly as a mother with kids, are going to be actively looking for wineries that have deliberately created interventions and experiences that can accommodate my kids who are desperate to run wild a little bit. Robin, you want to add to that before we head on?
Yes, I was just thinking, you know, as we open up again, one of the things that I've found here with the wineries in Australia is the great concern for their staff and their teams, and having had to lay people off during this period, especially cellar door staff. What we have found is that with the move towards more online sales and potentially more activation of wine clubs, some of the wineries have been able to redeploy their staff into other activities. Some of those activities include outbound phone sales, for example, something that mostly has been done by external companies and is not necessarily a skill set that somebody within the cellar door has had before. So once again, there are opportunities for smart operators to think about their teams, think about the way that they do business at the moment, especially in the direct-to-consumer space, and think about how they can actually use the staff that they have to play other roles, which obviously benefits them as individuals, as well as gives an opportunity for increasing those all-important full-margin direct sales that we're all going to need in the future.
100%. So, Ntsiki, going forward, operationally, what are some of the changes that you will be introducing, and how will you be communicating that to your market? You spoke about earlier that you've been using this time quite creatively, but it's one thing putting those things in place, it's another thing communicating it. And we've spoken previously in the other sessions about, you know, the need for our wine clubs to take on a slightly different role. So from a communication perspective, now is obviously not the time to be silent. Now is the time to communicate. How are you talking about your operational readiness to your customers? And what do you think is the message that people want to hear?
I think, especially for us, because we do not have our own cellar, we don't have, everything is rented out. So it's more like already we're collaborating with other areas. Like I'm collaborating with Delheim and Kulenov in terms of storage and production. So for us, it's been more basically like showing them actually what is happening in the cellar itself, because we're doing most of the things online. Like I'm going to be having a talk with a Japanese importer where we're going to be basically starting in the vineyards. It's like they don't have to be, while I can't be there, I'm going to be showing them actually things that are happening, all the procedures and the changes that are happening within the winery, to say, okay, this is what we've put in place and this is how we're actually operating now. And even though the key thing to do is obviously focusing on the staff working on to make these things happen.
Okay, fantastic. Kristen, I just want to add to that. Robin, did you want to say something? Do you want to add to that? You're going to move on?
No.
That's fine. We're
Good.
going to move on to Kristen. And Kristen, you wrote a piece for Biz Community on adapting to our new reality or dying. And beyond the refitting and the physical changes required, what can businesses do now to ready themselves and take advantage of the surge in online sales that we're seeing in other markets and that will come to South Africa? How do we, you know, we've spoken now, it's one thing selling that bottle of wine, but potentially repackaging our whole experience and making it available online?
Well, firstly, I think it's very important to understand that the online landscape has changed completely. We started seeing this a few weeks ago, probably a few months ago now in the UK with, you know, it's quite a hierarchical industry over there, especially where, you know, you've got your on-trade importers and your off-trade importers. And there's usually quite a strong line between the two. And what we've seen now is a lot of, you know, importers and distributors who are normally focused on selling wine to restaurants and independent retail, now starting up their own direct-to-consumer sales. So I think we're starting to see that now here as well. There are a lot of new entrants into the online space, online retail space. And there's no longer just a handful of kind of online retail stores and then, you know, the wineries that are e-commerce ready. So I think something that's extremely important right now is obviously, as Ntsiki was very aptly saying, is having your own e-commerce operation up and running. Obviously, if you're selling directly from the farm, you're going to get the highest margin and highest returns back. And yeah, obviously making that as easy as possible. So you don't want customers to have a frustrating experience with your online store, with your online offering. You want it to be seamless. So I think, yeah, we're going to see a trend towards that kind of user experience, like that UX. And then I think something that's very important is diversification. You know, right now, you know, I'm looking after the portfolios and the web marketing for both Publik.co.za and CyberCellar. And what I think we're seeing is most online retailers at the moment are taking pre-orders. So I think there's a huge opportunity right now for wineries to really get on their online side, not just their own websites, but obviously if you've got a strong database by yourself, that's excellent. But if you, I think you have to realize that a lot of consumers want to buy a mixed case of a few different wines. They want to, you know, a one-stop shop where they can get everything that they want. So I think it's very important, you know, if you're not listed in some of the major, whether it's wine retailers or even more general goods retailers, you know, whether that's the major grocers or major kind of online everything stores, I think it's important to try and get as many of those, you know, get your wine into as many of those spaces as possible. So obviously they've already got built up databases, you know, they've got eyeballs on their site, so that's going to create exposure for your brand. I must say from the online retailer side, we are under quite a lot of pressure because obviously a lot of wineries and distributors have suddenly realized that, you know, for the foreseeable future, the restaurant trade is going to be somewhat hampered, to say the least. So we are under quite a lot of pressure with new listings and a lot of wineries approaching us with their offerings. So I think the most important thing there is to, you know, make your offering as simple and easy to understand. have all your ducks in a row. You know, if you've got a media kit, great. You've got all your, you know, a lot of producers will have a Dropbox that's got all their high-res pack shots, both in JPEG and PNG, tasting notes, price lists, easy to understand promotions, so not like some complicated rebate structure. I think if you've got all of those ducks in a row, it's much more compelling for an online retailer to take on your brand. You know, you're not creating work for them. So I think you often have to just put yourself in, you know, if you're dealing with the kind of online retailers and online platforms, put yourself in their position and just think about how you can make their life a bit easier, how you can incentivize them to work more closely with your brand to make it more visible. And yeah, and then kind of beyond that, I think very much from the content side, you know, you want to make sure that you're working on your brand development. You've got consistency across platforms. You're getting your message out there. I think, you know, right now people are really looking for content to consume. So, you know, if you're partnering with influencers and photographers and writers to create content around your brand, that's the kind of stuff that people are going to see out there on the internet, and that will hopefully direct towards your sales directly.
Fantastic. So I think key is that we've really got to get our ducks in a row. We've got no time to waste, and there's no time like the present. And I love what you say, is putting yourself in the shoes of whether you are wanting to deal with an online retailer or a visitor directly, really being able to look at your business critically from the outside and assess how easy is it to do business with yourself. And I think that's what we've got to do. It's still quite a complicated process for many of us, and there are others that's doing it better, so we will go and shop there because it's easier and simpler. And we've all now flexed our online retail muscles. You know, we're buying stuff online, whether that's from big or small retailers, all the time, so we are used to it and we're comfortable with it. And I think as wineries and wine tourism experience, even tour operators, if you are not on there getting yourselves visible, making it interesting, fun, personal, and simple, you're going to miss out. So I want to come to you, Robin, as we start to wrap up this session. We can speak for a long time. There's so many juicy elements to tackle, but wine tourism is an incredibly intricate microcosm. It supports a delicate but very wide ecosystem or a value chain, and there are many small enterprises that exists within this value chain that have all obviously been affected very strongly by this. And it's been reported that the pandemic has put the spotlight on sustainable tourism and our impact on the world. And for many consumers, their choice of destination or experience will be influenced directly by being able to see that their contribution has had a positive spin-off, has helped some of those businesses or individuals within the value chain. So how important, in your opinion, is sustainability and the visual evidence that local communities are benefiting from wine tourism post-lockdown? And what advice do you have to share with regions to repackage themselves with this in mind?
Thanks, Mariette. But it's a great question. As many of you would be aware, in Australia, the current pandemic is really just the icing on the cake, for want of a better term, for what we've been through for the last several months. So back from late November last year, Australian wine regions have been experiencing drought, followed by bushfires, smoke taint, vintages that they couldn't pick, then the drop in tourism. Because of that direct effect, people couldn't travel to regions due to bushfires. And then, of course, we got this wonderful pandemic on top of everything else. What we found during that period of time, after the bushfires had occurred, was this real return to localism. So people were wanting to really support people in their local areas. They were desperate from the cities to get out and support those regions that had been affected. There was a thing called an empty esky campaign, where people were encouraged to take an esky in the car, head out to a region and buy up the local food and the local wine. So we were almost primed for this situation of local and regional support, which is also what we're seeing right now from local communities. So some of the things I'm hearing from small wineries in particular is just how humbled they are by the actual locals who are coming out and supporting them. So they're creating little packages for them, which might be a little picnic pack that they can come in, pick up, take away with them. And it is expected that that support will continue. So when we talk about sustainability, obviously there's a number of different ways to look at that word. Sustainability from an economic perspective, from a local, regional perspective, using the local community, and of course from a environmental perspective as well. People are looking much more closely, of course, at all of those things at the moment. They're looking at the impact on the world that not driving cars around and not having heavy manufacturing going on is what effects that's having on cleaning up the air, the canals of Venice, whatever it might be. So I think that we may see a shift in consumers wanting to visit places who do epitomise those values, which I think will be more shared values as we move forward. So all those things that Carolyn spoke about and that Kristen and the others have spoken about, those wonderful wide open spaces that we have, that ability to demonstrate that we are a sustainable, responsible industry at every level, I think will certainly work in our favour.
Absolutely. And it's about how softly do we touch the earth, and that's
yes,
kindness. You know, this is a human pandemic, it's a human crisis, and how are we looking after each other, how are we looking after the world, and creating experiences that, yes, they're fun, yes, they are enjoyable, but they are also light and they're good for us and for the earth. Thank you so much, ladies. I just want to wrap up. If there's anyone with a final thought or a pearl of wisdom, we like to end these sessions with the message of hope. There is hope, and we will travel again. How we travel will be significantly different. How we operate as businesses will be different. But we are a resilient bunch, aren't we? We've come through lots: bushfires, earthquakes, you know, economic crises, political crises, you name it. We will get through this. Carolyn, a last thought from yourself before we wrap up.
I was muted. Okay. I just wanted to say that I think social distancing can in fact contribute to a more personalized experience. And so, you know, I know that those two things seem like contradictory elements, but I do believe that it is possible to do that.
Fantastic. Kristen, from your side, a last thought.
Yeah, I think I just want to say that, you know, we have a lot of changes that are already happening, and things are going to change a lot more. But yeah, there's real opportunity for those businesses who are willing to change, who are willing to pivot. So I'm getting a bit of wind now where I am, who are willing to pivot and yeah, just really be open to embracing the new digital economy.
Fantastic, thank you. Ntsiki, from your side, do you have hope for the future?
Oh, definitely. And I feel this is the time where actually collaboration is going to be one of the big things too. Social distancing, but also collaborating throughout the value chain. It's not going to be like we're collaborating as wineries only, but collaborating throughout the value chain of our system.
Absolutely.
Collaboration, Ntsiki, I mean, it's been a golden thread through all our sessions. And I really want to tell producers that they should reach out to organizations like their wine route managers and like Vinpro. Yes. They've been working on beautiful things and protocols and plans, because I think people feel very lonely and frustrated, and where do I begin? So just reach out, collaborate, ask people for advice. Don't just work in your little silo.
Yes, I think like recently I had it was a Zoom tasting again with one of the wine shops. They were doing it with their clients, and I was one of the winemakers they had, just to do a tasting. That was the collaboration we had, so that they can sell through the wines in their shop, obviously, when the time permits. So it's all those little things.
Thank you for that. And we've had some beautiful sessions so far. We will be recording these sessions and sending insights and highlights to attendees in the industry. Stay tuned. We've got one more session to go this afternoon. It starts at 2 o'clock South African time. And we'll be getting involved in the question of sales and marketing. Is it appropriate to TikTok? Is it not appropriate? Should we be putting ourselves out there and sharing more, sharing less? And yeah, let's get involved and join us for that. You can still register for that session. I want to thank all the ladies for joining me this morning. And let's keep going. Let's collaborate and let's remember to keep it real now more than ever before. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye.